So, hi everyone, we're back with another episode of A Student's Perspective. My name is Paige Bechtel, and today I'm here with Dylan Garner, the creative director at Cohere. And so, Dylan, would you just like to just quickly introduce not only yourself, but maybe Cohere and just a little bit about your brand?
Sure thing, Paige. Thanks so much for having me. It's exciting to be a part of this podcast and, get a chance to kind of tell a little bit more about who I am, who Cohere is, and what we do. So Cohere is a branding agency. We like to say that we're a non-traditional agency that focuses on building brands at the core of our purposeful work. So we sit at the unique intersection of design, food, impact, and place. Started first as like a placemaking agency working with a lot of hospitality and commercial developers, making anywhere that you might live, work, or play its most beautiful, its most full potential. And now we work with anything from economic projects to restaurants and hospitality, all looking to transform their spaces and make them kind of the best they can be. And Cohere is in Philadelphia, but we also operate out of Baltimore, and we have a satellite office in New York as well.
Great. Yeah, and you do a good job of talking about some of the new philosophies. I think that Cohere is trying to really get out and talk about that intersection, which I noticed more on the website and just some of that language, which I don't know how you're able to wrap it up so quickly, but you did a great job with that. But I have definitely a handful of questions regarding that, but I want to step back a little bit further and learn a little bit more about you. So I know you're from some southern states at least, and
That's right.
Here as well. How has that kind of changed been moving to a little bit more urban condition?
Totally. It's funny. So I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I went to Virginia Tech. So I like to say ever since I started, my next sort of collegiate career, I was always taking steps to go north for some reason, which maybe we can unravel today. I'm trying to think about why that's happening. But in going to Virginia Tech, I actually played lacrosse there. So I got to know almost half my teammates were from what I call the hotbed, which is like Maryland, New York, Delaware. It's just kind of where lacrosse originated from, or really where a lot of the girls are super talented and playing in that. So I think by nature of getting to know those girls and getting to get to know their family and then playing throughout my career, I was always sort of coming up to more northern environments. And part of that, I just always really loved the cities. Not to say that southern cities aren't also, have their charm, but I think that's exactly it. Philly to me had really interesting historical background and just incredible mixture of different types of cultures and people. And I was drawn to less of like a new city and one that was grounded in history and grounded in kind of already has been there before, but how can we revive it in a way? Which I think is really interesting of how even Cohere has sort of evolved as an agency and taking on projects that continue to like evolve with the landscape of different developments and readapting those developments as well.
Absolutely. I've read a few things about that and just like the revitalization aspect that they're starting to recognize more and more. And we deal a lot with adaptive reuse at my school too.
Oh,
it's
great.
Message. Yeah, which is incredible. But seeing that applied to a different scale design is so interesting to me. But I think it also goes to say with the people that you surround yourselves with and the people within those environments that want to create a mutual, well-being and sense of keeping this place alive for as long as possible. So thinking in that same way, because I wanted to already ask about like, the revitalization and how you bring that to Cohere. How do you think that's going to apply to the ever-changing environments that COVID has now offered us?
Yeah, I'm like super inspired by that like train of thought and thinking. I was talking to a colleague the other day about how we truly sit at this like really interesting sweet spot where we're working with tons of different developers, whether it's in the commercial space or residential space, looking to revitalize these different, anything from a building to a neighborhood. And so in thinking about let's just say, for example, restaurateurs who right now are definitely struggling with, their day-to-day functions and sort of how they can continue to be economically sound. It's interesting how we sort of hold hands with both of those people. So we know the people that have space and need to fill it, and then we know the people that need space or need a larger space due to the parameters that COVID has put on us, right? So I think it's definitely the time to be creative and understand how and what connections may exist within our networks and how those might work together. So I'm intrigued to understand kind of where that may take us, how we might be able to pass, like I said, if we're holding hands, how can we get those two different entities to also overlap and see where that might take us.
So the way you kind of explain that too is that, the Cohere in general is always ever changing and evolving.
That's right.
And I was trying to understand a little bit more about some of the details. And
we get this all the time, so please,
yeah. But the way that you express kind of how you either display some of your portfolio work or things like that. And what I was gathering was somewhat in snippets too, because all these brands and companies are also ever changing. How does that kind of go working with hand in hand people? So you understand that their brand needs to change from point A to point B, but several times. And so does that just build a longer lasting relationship with one of these clients? Or how does that change from when you started?
Oh, that's a really good question. In thinking about the evolutions of the companies or even the projects that we work with, part of our process is to go super deep in what we call like a discovery phase as our first touch point with the client. So it's a series of different types of questions from, your long-term goals to your short-term goals to, who are you attracting? Who would you like to attract as your core audience in the future? So it's like this push and pull between what might be like some short-sighted ideas or short-term goals and who and what and why and how, to then also like long-term planning. And I think because we do that type of deep dive, it reveals many different opportunities that can be utilized either, day one, maybe in a couple of months, maybe down the line, all the way up to 10 years. Now, I think what we've learned, and that COVID is even a great example of, is that you can't predict sometimes 6 months to a year, nonetheless 10 years. So how we like to think about those goals or how we like to think about, what may be discovered through a 10-year plan is, these are ambitions that you or the company or your project has. Whether those ambitions come out the other end like you thought they might is a different story, but being able to capture those, being able to then be flexible on, which, path you might take for the next is essential. And I think that breeds that flexibility that today's world clearly needs. But, it can serve as like a roadmap to, like I said, what might be your 6 month, 1 year, up to 10 year kind of ambitions, goals, and how you might shift those core sort of principles, which we typically will define as your values. Those should never go away. They truly might evolve in some way or another, but I think that becomes your moral compass of how you then navigate anything from COVID-19 to opening a new store or a couple new stores, or making that decision. Do we want to go south, east coast, west coast? That's sort of how we ground our process, but also how we leave everything on the table of what could be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it allows for more opportunities to create extensions through that core you've already established and getting to know people so well. But
right.
I keep even thinking of maybe it's a lack of communication when people start to rebrand themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's a word that I keep considering, and how maybe that's not as applicable to what it should be considered. And that's why it was the first thing that jumped to my mind every time I read something about evolving and kind of ever changing, is because you don't necessarily need to have that contrast of a switch if you're able to continue to work off of a strong base that you've already created.
That's right. That's right. Staying foundational. There's those foundational building blocks that I think should always remain as like what I like to call your moral compass, your brand's compass on how to navigate XYZ.
Yeah. And so another thing I want to talk about, just ask your opinion in general, storytelling. What does that kind of mean to you through your brand?
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like all of these questions kind of all connect in a way. And especially when I think about like Cohere as an agency, you were just talking about evolving and how does one continue to evolve, or what sort of helps, a company understand, oh, this is the best path for that evolution. We talked a little bit about Cohere as the agency, which is like, it's the bread and butter, it's the core of who we are. But on top of that, in the past 6 months, we've had a lot of growth and evolution that has now become a part of our storytelling. I will come back to storytelling, I promise. But we recently, as like the probably like in the past year and a half or so, and you may have seen this on our website, that we brought on an advisory service. So we brought on Chef Eric Opelholzer. He's the founder of Tim Greens, who brings expertise as a successful restaurateur. We may not know him here in the East Coast as much because most of his restaurants are out west, but he grew Tim Greens to a $250 million empire, partnering with Danny Meyer, who is known for Shake Shack and Union Square Hospitality Group. So in bringing someone like that expertise into what Cohere does, we saw an opportunity to begin to, experiment with different dishes and different, how can we bring to life what he's really good about, or good to speak to, which is impacting the food system in a positive manner, of course, measuring impact, helping, grow different, or I should say kind of younger entrepreneurs within their lifespan. So part of that evolution is creating what we call our Cohere Food Lab. On top of that, we've also had Maiden Creek, which is our sister botanical design brand. So when I think about all of these evolutions of your last question, I think what's nice about it is Cohere's going through some of these things as well. So being able to translate what we're learning, our experience, to our clients and their projects too. None of that, I don't think, would have been possible if we weren't able to truly grasp, what I think is part of our bread and butter, which would be storytelling. So how do you then translate your goals, your ideas, your concepts into, very clear, concise messaging and language that creates your brand story? That's part of, I would say, what we've been able to hone in on and thinking about, how can we best utilize what, for instance, Eric Oberholzer is good at, and how can we translate that to our other clients? So having our Cohere Food Lab is like a testing ground for some of these things. And what's great is, different clients and projects can tap into these experiences that we create, and really, get to learn new things, get to try new things, almost like a Q&A like you and I are doing in a micro kind of experience like that. So I think like as a whole, we worked really hard to become even better storytellers. That was not something that I would say was easy. I think we started as like a design agency, so it was all about the design. How do we communicate visually? We've always had messaging a part of that, but seeing sort of how the world was headed maybe a year or two ago, my boss, CEO Antoinette Johnson, was really intrigued to be like a local mouthpiece for all our projects that we have. So we recently relaunched our website that we call like a content engine, which I think you could also, synonymously say that that's a storytelling engine. Why do we need to wait for the New York Times to pick something up, or the Washington Post, or the Philly Inquirer, when we can also kind of craft those stories and help support the different projects that we work on and the do good that they're looking to also accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the blogs and things like that, you could read forever what goes on within your site, and the information and knowledge that you're able to spread through your outlet, which is incredible. I guess I ask all these questions about experience and storytelling because I try to find ways to overlap with my major and myself too. So I guess I didn't really explain necessarily,
Yeah,
but
who are you, Paige? Tell me all about you.
I'm an interior architecture and design background. So
Oh, awesome.
in the school of architecture we work within, but interior architecture and design you kind of really break into graphics, and you've had the opportunity to work with other graphic students within the fine arts program, and we kind of work hand in hand to our best to in the school. But the more and more we see, like whether it be applying for jobs or just places we draw inspiration from, whether it be firms or whatnot, a lot of them carry on interiors and graphics, and
Right.
finally that branding starts to overlay. But talking about experience and how these things all start to overlap, it's nice to see how it overlaps with your field so closely. And I wanted to make these questions as almost general and thought provoking as possible because I want people and the students that are seeing this to be able to see those relationships and see how they compare outside of our field in general, because they really do affect everyone. And the fact that we can have these conversations about the ever changing society around us and just where we all respond to the clientele and the personnel that we meet, how it's affecting us culturally, really.
Yeah, very well said. And I think all your questions are, creating that, you're creating your own little story with this, which is awesome.
Yeah. I guess I also want to talk to you a little bit about, so you've been at Cohere for 7 years now, I believe, too, and you started as an intern.
That's right.
What has that progression been like? I feel like, it's a really strong story in itself because people dream of that and be able to work up the ranks to achieve the position that you are within now. And how has your roles changed and kind of what responsibilities have you taken on since you've been a part of Cohere?
That's awesome. That's a good question. Yeah, so it is crazy to think that 7 years ago around this time, I was just coming out of my internship into a junior designer role, essentially. And I think, for me, I kind of came into, at that time, we were called Ad Media before we rebranded to Cohere. I like to say I kind of came in sort of guns blazing. I just had finished another internship at a kind of bigger firm here, and I had soaked so much learning up, but I didn't end up nailing that job or getting that job. So I was kind of fired up to land one. And I think everything happens for a reason because it made me come into at media at that time with a lot of sort of hard work ethic, and tenacity around, okay, no one's going to tell you what you could do here. You have to kind of pioneer that for yourself. So it's almost like having your own little, one of my favorite coaches always calls it, and it sounds a little narcissistic, but it's not. He calls it me ink. So in your case, Paige ink. You're the only one that's, going to take on what you want to achieve. People are out there to help you, but I definitely think that, you got to put it out there to the universe what you're really after. And so early on in one of my interviews with my boss, Antoinette, she asked me sort of career path, what I was looking to do. Well, I didn't realize she was asking in that year. I was thinking, okay, what's your career path? And so I said, yeah, at some point here, I definitely think I want to be a creative director. I'd like to lead the creative discussions. I'd love to really have sort of a thumbprint and a say on what's going to be the agency's sort of litmus test of design. Like I said, I didn't realize that was going to be, as soon as it was. But, you fast forward 2 years later, just sort of how things were changing within the agency and what needed to happen, and sort of the leadership role that I was taking on, sort of led me there. And, Antoinette trusted me in enough and knew that she could groom me into the director that I am today, which is wild to think. You may notice by our website that we are what I like to call female friendly and heavy in a way. Part of that is, I definitely think that part of it is intentional. It's not in any way trying to not have men be a part of us, but you rarely see agencies that have maybe as many women, and especially women leadership, as Cohere does. And so I think we like to lead, with that in mind, but also, I think just trying to be more empathetic to the clients that we have, the projects, the team, and trying to lead with, that kind of mentality, which is a little more different than some of the places and spots that I've been at before.
Yeah, absolutely. I once had to write a blog article on kind of the power of being I work for a firm, and we are primarily female driven too.
Oh, wow.
In leadership positions, but still female strong, and being able to talk about the empathy and the conversations that you're able to hold through just some of those relationships and some of our natural kind of foreign qualities. It's a really fun conversation to have, and to be able to talk about us and empower us in that way too, I think is a strong benefit to that.
Yeah, that's incredible that you've also had that same experience. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's beautiful to work with people that you can relate with so closely, definitely. So could you explain for me a little bit more about what being a creative director means, and maybe some of the relationships of some of the staff members that you work with closely, or what is it like to create content in that nature, working with either designers or say photographers or people who offer that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, and why it's a good question is that I think roles and sort of what's it called, like different names of different roles are maybe a little different in each agency or in each kind of workplace. So I oversee what I call the creative department. So for the most part, I review most of the work that we have, help facilitate it, and kind of push it to its highest potential. But I also am a bit of a hybrid between account executive. So I also have a couple of different clients that I, if you will, kind of lead and man. So taking them through our process of discovery and into strategy, and trying to pull out all those goals and things that we talked about earlier on, as well as sort of bring them through the creative process and completion execution of that project. So that's been a new role that I've taken on probably in the past year and a half or so. Just enjoying kind of that client interaction, and because we're sort of small in general, all of our entire teammates, no one, though you may come in as a writer or a designer, you're going to be doing a lot of everything, wearing multiple hats, which it makes every day new and exciting, but very challenging too. So as far as role, and I'm trying to think all the different responsibilities, I kind of mix between an account executive, a creative director. I still like to get my hands dirty on a couple of things. I think that's kind of the nutshell.
No, it makes perfect sense. Because I also want to ask you. Oh, this is kind of random. Well, not really random at all. But ladies, wine, and design. How has that fallen into, or where did you find them? And you found them, but how did it come to be?
Yeah, totally. So one of my good friends, but also good design friend, Kelly Clausen, hit me up maybe about 4 or 5 years ago now, which is wild to think, and said, "Hey, I just saw this new salon by Jessica Wash. They don't have one nearby. They have one in New York, but we could create one here." And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. So it was kind of as simple as that, which is wild to think about. It just, I still remember one of our first sort of get-togethers, and we had maybe 4 or 5 people who were so nervous about it. We actually had it at our old office, which was great. And now, the past 4 or 5 years, we've been running the Philadelphia chapter of Ladies Wine Design, which is a salon mentor circle for women and non-binary people, just looking to talk design, creativity, anywhere from, I guess you could say, processes. It becomes this therapeutic session where, you get to meet other women within the field and get to hear kind of parts of their experiences that might lend itself to you and your growth and your career. So we meet monthly. COVID has made things a little bit interesting, so we've done some virtual meetups, a lot like this. I certainly miss the in-person though, because I just think you get to truly sort of connect a little bit more. So we're trying to figure that out ourselves and how we might be able to accomplish that.
Mm-hmm. So are people within Cohere actually a part of that as well? And how?
Yeah. So they, Coherians, if you will, have come to events and helped support different events. We've collaborated with one this past January where we did like our discovery session called the 10-year plan, but with the whole like group. It was awesome. It was right before COVID, so it was great to like be able to have that like last sort of like connection, growth, and community building event right before everything went down, which is crazy to think about. We're even talking about doing a reboot of that event, whether it's virtual or in person. We're trying to figure that out, but where we would check back in on that discovery plan just to say, okay, what progress have you made? What flexibility or pivots did you need to partake in due to whatever circumstance it might be? So we're looking forward to doing another collaboration with that soon.
That is great. It sounds like a secondary kind of networking circle in itself, which is really nice.
Right.
Sometimes design industry that crosses between, just personally getting to meet people a little bit past kind of being in the field and out, on a work day kind of situation.
Yeah.
But I kind of have a two-part question, I guess, that leads off of how you kind of are able to reach people in that same like through social media, how that's changed. And I kind of thought that your experience would probably be the perfect scale to reference social media, because I've had conversations with people young and old about it and their influence on it, how it's changed them. But I feel like within the past 7 years is really when we've seen things really start to kick off, whether it be through Instagram or even LinkedIn, and using these profiles as a way of reaching people. So how have you seen that change, especially in your field specifically through marketing and graphics, and being able to reach people as personally as possible, or the perfect clientele almost?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my partner is a web developer, so don't tell him I said this. But I mean, I truly think that social media is almost your new website, especially Instagram. The first thing that I think, I guess I would say, millennials, Gen Zs, like the bottom edge of, some of the boomers is instead of going to your website, they're going to go to your Instagram to kind of get a sense of your brand's vibe, what they can expect of you, just an overall feel for your business. So it's huge, it's key. And that's only one component of social media, right? So here at Cohere, Antoinette preaches about what we call the marketing flywheel. So if you think about it as a Venn diagram, there's the blogs that you write, there's the posts that you do on Instagram and Facebook, maybe it's on LinkedIn. There's the press that you might get. So it's kind of like this little pie chart of all the things that you do to get noticed or for someone to know more about you. And we like to say that there should be 5 to 8 touch points that someone has heard you. And by that time, that's when they're either coming to your restaurant. I must check out this new apartment. It's funny to be on like the internal side of that, because I am somebody who does not like to talk about myself or talk about some of the things that I might be a part of. Like I'll do it once, but you need to do it, like she said, 5 to 8 times on those different channels, or maybe that one channel, which could be Instagram, right? For somebody to pick up on it, to truly read it. There's just so much going on. There's so many different sources. I'm only talking about a few, right? You mentioned a couple as well. There's so many sources of content that, one person gets flooded with. So how do you, touch that person within the many different things that they're getting. And so our formula is 5 to 8 times. And you might even be able to see that if you were to go on our Instagram. Yeah. You might be able to notice, okay, I saw, one of their newest restaurants, the Wayward, pop up a week ago. Oh, I just saw it pop up in their story. There's so many ways to kind of pop into that feed, whether that is Instagram, LinkedIn, and now you can see our pivot of our website, which we call our content engine, where we will be, writing our own blogs, posting things that we get from press. There's just a multitude of ways that you can get in touch, but we find that those 5 to 8 touch points, whether that's a social post, story, email blast, blog, press, all of those will help, really communicate that vibe, that feeling. So I think it's crucial enough that now you need to be inspiring enough in one post that only has 150 characters.
Limited.
Isn't that insane? Yeah. So trying to take even what I just described and putting that into a post is a lot. But creating clarity and conciseness, and then something that's truly inspiring and interesting is where we're at. And that's why I think if you think about website and how much they try to pack into there into one post, evolution forever, forever evolving.
But I think you guys have also done a great job at taking all those strategies and those things that you talk about, making it kind of concise scenarios that we use on social media and some of these broader networking devices through your webpage as well, because it's not, I don't want to say lengthy, but it doesn't feel heavy in the fact that people won't take the time to read through and understand all the resources that are there, because it's still kept in a concise manner. And I think some of those snippets and the things we talked about kind of relate to that and how you tell that story through your webpage as well.
That's
so
right.
How do you come to know so many marketing devices and things like this? Is it just through the collaboration of people that you work with? Even just creating a structure of elements like that, where you say the 8 posts or something along those lines. How do you get to learn some of those elements and how they work?
Yeah, that's so interesting.
That's cool or not.
I know. Well, and I do think it's over time we've been able to, clearly state that flywheel that I'm talking about. That's something that I feel in the first, I've been here for 7 years, and Antoinette's had this company for about 15. I feel it's, whittling down to how the audience member, how the market is moving, and how to, connect the best marketing tools that you can into one sort of roadmap. So, as marketers, we've always used, we've jumped on social quite early. We used to manage a lot of accounts ourselves, and now we've, if you will, kind of whittled down the main sort of package or roadmap around social media that our clients can actually run those themselves. So, we'll set them up with great content, photo and video, a sense of what that voice might be, and they can run that themselves. And that typically, comes with email marketing and how to, create very clickable emails. And so I think it's just a matter of, we've been working through these different things over a lot of time, and now we're sort of whittling down to its best use. You know what I mean? It's hard for me to think on how does that happen? But of course, staying flexible and open to what the future, I don't see myself on TikTok right now, but you never know. I saw Taco Bell try and do it, but I'm not sure that they did it well,
Yeah, of course. I guess I also want to jump back to what we talked about at the very beginning about locational qualities. Because I think another important part of your brand, and what I came to know about Cohere, is that you guys want to give back to your environment and the people you surround yourselves with. So working in such an urban environment, you recognize the history, like you already said, of these communities, I think is a really strong point. And I think that relates back to interior as well, too, just because you were able to recognize the history that you surround yourself with in Philadelphia, and why these built environments are so important. So you have extended even beyond that too, like you said, with satellite company, and working in New York, et cetera, how has that affected how you will possibly expand working in other environments outside of Philly?
Yeah. Well, so at Cohere, we're very passionate about getting out of our bubble, and I think everyone should try and be passionate about that. It's so easy to get comfortable or get distracted by whatever it might be, but the move to expand New York was strategic to really get to bump shoulders with some of the best in the business, and it's super global there, and by being able to create new networks or tap into new networks, we're able to understand and kind of grow our experience too, without having to maybe hire someone on, or without having to, live there or have all these different projects there. I think we're always looking to understand what can be best in class or cutting edge. You don't have to move to a certain location to, get that kind of knowledge. There's tons of different publications or, design blogs that can really take you to the next level, just understanding what these next level tastemakers are interested in, or in the sustainability route, seeing Patagonia create their own food products. Why are they doing these things? I think that Antoinette has been really good about studying different companies that are doing these, what might seem outlandish, or just make you wonder why would someone do that? To be able to, take these learning lessons and adapt them into even our culture, our projects, being these little connectors and lifelines for that.
That's actually another good point. I didn't consider the trends that you guys kind of have to understand and grasp, and whether it's through other business models or kind of the inspiration around you. Where do you guys usually gather that from? From our within our industry, it's kind of the trade shows and watching publications, absolutely, and magazines like that. But where's that source primarily come from for you guys?
Oh, that's a really good question. Certainly some of the same things. I know what you mean, interior design. Those trade shows are gold. And there are some different sort of summits, which I know is weird at this time, because it's I think they're all going digital or virtual. But there's beauty in that too, because now anyone can attend, you know what I mean? Or you get to bump shoulders virtually with just about anybody. It sort of takes the boundaries or barriers off of these things, which I think we're also trying to learn. But we are certainly very lucky that I think the different leaders of our company come from different backgrounds and can now truly kind of become pillars of our company and sort of what they are learning. So I think a lot of it just comes from the network of who you keep and who you know, and continuing to go after those different moguls that you want to learn from. Antoinette's been a really great inspiration in that, as far as always having certain mentors in different diverse industries. Don't have to tell the people that they're your mentor, but being able to tap into these, understanding these different business models, or understanding these different trends and how they come up with their ideas, all of that just begins to sort of become a part of your processes and what you do. So I would say, right now, blogs, events, if you can do them virtually, are fine too, just to kind of get yourself re-inspired and out of your bubble.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I guess always listening, because a lot of these conversations too are the things that you want to keep continuing to extend not only your boundaries, their connections and relationships, and like you said, the mentorships. This is where this platform, Students' Perspective, has grown for me, because I've gathered a handful of mentors that I never knew possible, and the fact that they all fall out or outside of my field is another really
huge. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's conversations.
Yeah, it's at its core, it's applied to so many different things and so many different industries, it just takes shape in different ways. So your principles that you learn and are continuing to learn and grow are only going to apply themselves. But it is fun, like working with different architecture firms, sometimes doing the interior designs ourselves, sometimes working with other interior designers just to get like a sense of how they come up with their ideas, collaborating with them on like how to, I think just getting like re-inspired. It's very inspiring because everyone has different ways they've done it. And me and my friends were just talking about this. It's crazy how like, the more sort of experience you get, the more you're going to pick and pull with things that really work for you, work for your clients or projects, because everyone's a little bit different. We have our processes, but each client always presents a little something new to it. Because one size I definitely don't think fits all. So
absolutely. And getting to know people so closely. And I like what you had said so much earlier on about the discovery process. And
right.
Getting to know not only your client, but just their thoughts, their goals, their ambition. That's something that we don't talk enough about. And really the philosophy of like, half of it is philosophical, just getting to know that person in general and understanding why they think a certain way or why they're triggered by certain emotions and colors and things like that. And it's so important to stay hold to during the whole process.
Yeah, it's like it just sets a good foundation. Sometimes we call ourselves therapists because that first like questionnaire, it can get there, it can go deep, and it doesn't always have to, right? But you are beginning to kind of unveil more than whatever that logo or facade that you have, right? Like what's behind that and why is that there? Kind of constantly will hear why, to really get to like the meat of the concept or the meat of the ideas or reasoning behind these things.
So those questionnaires, I just have more thoughts.
She's gonna get one, isn't she?
I think those questionnaires, are they different for like if you're going towards someone within hospitality versus just different backgrounds? Are they different, the questions that you kind of gear towards them?
I would say that like there's like the core questions, but they can tweak a little bit depending on the industry. Just because like specifically like customer sets or audience members are a little different. Like, yeah, I would say that like, a restaurant questionnaire and about that audience member and what they're looking for is a little bit different than like residential. Someone looking for an apartment or looking for a home, or commercial looking to work there or, trying to retain new tenants. But they all sort of start off that core foundation of questions. And I think, and some like even now, like I've been seeing new discovery questions, just friends passing things around. And now I have more that I would sort of want to like tweak with that, just being able to like grasp, whether it's deeper questions or just being able to like pull out new ways of thinking through them. So it's always truly evolving, like we said, like we started off with. Do you have a set of questions that you like to ask, like, and starting with a brief or anything, like, even if it's like a project brief, do you have some of those like, ideal 4 to 5 questions that you ask to really get yourself in the game, or how does that work for you?
Sort of, and very similarly, what I was also considering is that a lot of the times, because our questions can get so in depth, like the way I'm able to ask you questions that are extremely in depth, it's like almost breaking down them and trying to simplify them in ways that they will understand, because that's the reason why we're working for them in general, is because they don't have the knowledge or the kind of background that we do to be able to express all these things for them.
That's right.
So, I guess it gets just not complicated, but it is complicated to simplify things in that manner. Whether that even means like breaking it down to what material makes you feel safe or comfortable, and we can contrast between that just by understanding those like small signifiers, I think. But getting to the person generally, I think it all starts out really similar in that aspect, and knowing your culture and your background and some of those influences. But I just love that.
I'm with you though. Driving clarity can be challenging. I truly think it takes a little bit of patience. I mean, because those, any of those questions can become heavy, not necessarily like in a bad way, but just like so much can come from it. So it's like, all right, well, what's truly rising to the top? How can I drive clarity of this answer or understanding? And that I think is tough. That's certainly why we like to rely on a team and how, utilizing those different perspectives to understand sort of what are those key points based on what we're learning.
Well, I guess now we're running towards the end of our time, but thank you so much for being here today. And this is another reason that we're so thankful that we're able to offer some of these virtual calls, because, like we said, some of the conversations that wouldn't have been able to happen now are able to happen because we're able to talk through. So the conveniences of this have been pretty beneficial up until now. So we'll see how it works out for us.
Yeah.
Would you mind also telling everyone where they could reach you, whether it be on social media for yourself and Cohere, possibly?
Oh, that sounds great, Paige. Thank you. So I'm Dylan Garner, and you can find me on Instagram. This is funny. At Dillio, so that's Dylieoo. This is why you have to make sure you pick good names for yourself. I know. It kind of fits me though, I think. And then Cohere, we also have an Instagram. We're at Cohere-Co. Check us out. We post quite daily. We're using our marketing flywheel as much as we can to sort of pump out some of those unique stories that exist, and really help promote kind of what our clients are up to, what Philly's up to. We have a unique set of different, a unique network here in Philly that really kind of covers anywhere that you may want to eat, drink, sleep, enjoy. We have a lot to share.
Yeah, absolutely gratify the amount of resources that come from Cohere. So absolutely, we're excited to follow along and see the rest and what's to come from all these changes and everything that's happening.
Yeah, stay tuned with us, you too, and good luck with school and everything. Thanks for having us.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for watching another episode of Student's Perspective.
Thanks, Paige.
Thank you.